The city often sang its loudest songs at dusk, a symphony of traffic and distant sirens. But for me, true solace arrived with the hush of late night. It was then, when the world outside my window blurred into soft and distant shapes, and the streetlights cast long, shivering shadows, that I could finally breathe. My apartment, a small haven tucked away on the third floor of a brownstone, felt less like a dwelling and more like an extension of my own guarded heart. Books lined the walls like silent, trusted friends, and a half-finished canvas sat on an easel, its colors muted, mirroring the landscapes of my soul. I'd learned to cherish these quiet moments, to wrap myself in them like a worn, beloved blanket. They were my refuge from the echoes of a past that still, even now, sent shivers through me. A past love, a vibrant, all-consuming fire that had eventually consumed me, leaving behind ashes and a persistent, aching void. It wasn't a wound that bled openly anymore, but a deep internal scar, sensitive to the touch, easily bruised by the slightest tremor of connection. So I built walls, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for self-preservation. My routine was a carefully constructed fortress, early mornings spent in quiet contemplation, days lost in the gentle demands of my work as a freelance illustrator, and then, as night deepened, my ritual of venturing out, not to bustling bars or lively gatherings, but to the hushed corners of the city that seemed to understand my need for solitude. An empty park bench under a sky dusted with stars, a bookstore where the scent of old paper was a calming balm, or, most often, a specific cafe. The Still Point, it was called, a curious name, fitting for a place that seemed to exist outside the usual rush of time. Tucked away on a cobblestone side street, its facade was unassuming, dark brick, a single, elegantly scripted sign, and a window that always seemed to glow with a soft, inviting amber light. Inside, it was a sanctuary, exposed brick walls, mismatched velvet armchairs, and small, dark wood tables scattered beneath pendant lights that cast intimate pools of warmth. The air was always thick with the comforting aroma of roasted coffee beans and a faint, sweet hint of cinnamon. I discovered it months ago, a few weeks after the last painful vestiges of my old life had finally dissolved, leaving me adrift. I remembered walking aimlessly, caught in a sudden, unexpected downpour, my umbrella useless against the sheets of rain. I'd seen the warm glow, a beacon in the stormy evening, and stumbled inside, a shivering, heartbroken mess. The cafe had been nearly empty then, just one other customer lost in a book and the owner behind the counter. He hadn't asked anything, hadn't offered platitudes. He'd simply handed me a mug of steaming chamomile tea, his eyes kind, his presence a quiet anchor in my tempest. From that night on, the Still Point became my sanctuary. I'd go there 3, maybe 4 nights a week, always after 9 o'clock, always seeking the same corner table by the window. I'd order my usual, a plain black coffee, sometimes a slice of their impossibly soft lemon poppy seed cake, and I'd lose myself in my sketchbook, or a novel, or simply the rhythmic drip of rain against the glass. It wasn't about the coffee, not entirely. It was about the atmosphere, the unspoken understanding, and the man who ran it. His name was Leo. I knew that much from the small, elegantly carved name tag he sometimes wore. He wasn't loud or overly effusive, unlike many cafe owners. Leo moved with a quiet grace, his hands strong and sure as he pulled espresso shots or wiped down the counter. He had eyes that were the color of warm hazelnut, framed by dark, intelligent brows, and a smile that was less a flash and more a slow, gentle unfolding, reserved for moments of genuine connection. He was tall, with a lean build, and his dark hair was usually a little disheveled, as if he'd just run a hand through it. He rarely spoke much to me, which suited my guarded nature perfectly. Our interactions were composed of small, comfortable rituals. My nod as I entered, his soft, the usual Ilara. He'd learned my name weeks ago, effortlessly, without ever asking. The clink of the mug as he placed it before me, sometimes a fleeting, shared glance over the rim of my coffee cup. It was enough, more than enough, perhaps. Tonight, the city was shrouded in a soft, persistent drizzle, the kind that made the streetlights blur into halos and turned the cobblestones into gleaming obsidian mirrors. I walked with my umbrella held low, the rhythmic patter a calming cadence against the quiet hum of my thoughts. The familiar warmth of the still point embraced me the moment I pushed open the heavy wooden door. Only one other table was occupied. 2 students hunched over laptops, their conversation a low murmur. Leo was behind the counter, polishing the espresso machine with the meticulous care that bordered on reverence. He looked up as the bell above the door chimed, and his eyes met mine. That slow, gentle smile touched his lips, and a familiar, unbidden warmth bloomed in my chest. It was a fleeting sensation, quickly quelled by the icy grip of caution, but it was there nonetheless. "Alara," he murmured, his voice a low, melodic rumble, like the distant purr of a contented cat. "Rough night out there?" I shivered slightly, shaking the rain from my umbrella. "Just a little damp," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. I walked to my usual table, shedding my coat onto the back of the chair. The scent of coffee, richer tonight, seemed to cling to the air, promising comfort. He started preparing my coffee without another word, his movements fluid and practiced. I watched him, as I often did, captivated by the quiet intensity of his focus. The way his brows subtly furrowed, the precise measure of the beans, the whir and hiss of the machine, all culminated in that perfect dark elixir. There was an artistry to it, a dedication that I recognized from my own craft. He placed the mug before me, the ceramic warm against my fingertips. "Thought you might need an extra shot tonight," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Looks like a night for it." I blinked, surprised. He'd noticed. Not just my presence, but perhaps the subtle dip in my usual composure, the slightly more hunched shoulders, the shadow in my eyes that even the dim taffé light couldn't entirely obscure. A faint blush crept up my neck. "Thank you, Leo," I managed, taking a tentative sip. It was perfect, as always. Rich, dark, and utterly comforting. I opened my sketchbook, letting the scent of pencil lead and paper ground me. My fingers, accustomed to the familiar weight of the charcoal stick, began to sketch a phantom landscape, the misty outlines of an old memory. A field of wild poppies, vibrant red against a summer sky, before the storm had gathered. The image made my hand tremble, a ghost sensation of joy, and then its inevitable decay. I could feel Leo's presence, not intrusive, but like a soft hum in the background. He was back behind the counter, wiping it down, arranging cups, but every now and then I felt the subtle shift of his gaze. It wasn't a stare, not probing, but more like a gentle acknowledgement, a quiet curiosity. It was different from the insistent, demanding attention I'd known before. That kind of attention had felt like a spotlight, bright and scrutinizing, leaving no room to hide. Leo's felt more like moonlight, soft, diffuse, allowing shadows to remain, yet illuminating just enough to feel seen, understood, without pressure. My mind drifted. I remembered the way I used to crave that spotlight, believing it was love, believing that being constantly watched, constantly scrutinized, meant I was cherished. It had been intoxicating, a heady rush that masked the slow erosion of my own self, until one day, There was nothing left of me but a hollow shell, reflecting only his desires, his expectations. When he left, there was no me to pick up the pieces, only an empty space. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, the warmth a small comfort against the chill that sometimes seized me. I had promised myself I would never let anyone look at me like that again, never allow anyone to dismantle my carefully reassembled self. But Leo wasn't looking at me like that. He was simply there, a constant, warm presence in my often cold world. I stole a glance at him. He was now restocking the display case, his profile etched against the warm light. There was a scar above his left eyebrow, a faint line that gave his otherwise gentle face a hint of ruggedness. He caught my eye, and again, that slow, soft smile. This time, he didn't look away immediately. His gaze held mine for a beat longer, a silent question perhaps, or just a shared moment of quiet understanding. My heart gave a faint, unfamiliar flutter, like a caged bird testing its wings for the first time in years. It was a terrifying, exhilarating sensation. I quickly lowered my gaze, focusing intently on the lines forming on my sketchbook page, trying to push away the unsettling warmth that spread through me. This was dangerous territory. This feeling, this nascent spark, was the very thing I had vowed to avoid. It was the crack in the wall, the vulnerability I had so painstakingly buried. Yet, a part of me, a small, stubborn part deep within, couldn't quite dismiss it. It was the part that craved connection, that yearned for something beyond the solitude I had chosen. Leo wasn't trying to break down my walls. He was simply existing on the other side, radiating a gentle warmth that seeped through the cracks, softening the hard edges I had carefully constructed. The rain outside intensified, drumming a steady rhythm against the window. The two students had packed up and left, leaving the cafe entirely to me and Leo. The silence grew deeper, more profound, yet it wasn't an awkward silence. It was a comfortable one, filled with the soft clinking of cups as Leo continued to tidy, and the quiet scratch of my charcoal on paper. I felt safe here, with him. A strange, unsettling safety that was both alluring and deeply frightening. It was the kind of safety that whispered promises of opening up, of letting go, of perhaps one day allowing my heart to truly heal. But healing meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant risk, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Not yet. Not after everything. His quiet acceptance was a balm I hadn't realized how deeply I craved. When I finally rose to leave, the rain had tapered to a fine mist. "Thank you, Leo," I said, my voice a little husky. I hesitated, then pushed my sketchbook towards him slightly. "It helps." He looked at the page, a faint smile touching his lips. It was a charcoal drawing of the cafe window, blurred by the rain, the amber light spilling out onto the wet cobblestones. There was a lone figure, indistinct, standing just inside. Me. "It's beautiful, Alara," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. He didn't touch the page, just looked, his gaze lingering on the details. "You capture the feeling perfectly." My cheeks warmed. It was the first time he'd offered such a direct compliment on my work. The recognition, unprompted and genuine, felt like a small, unexpected gift. I merely nodded, unable to articulate the sudden rush of vulnerability. "Good night, Leo." "Good night, Alara. Be careful out there." Walking home, the city air cool and damp against my skin, I replayed the moment. His gaze on my drawing, the warmth in his voice, the way he said my name. Each small detail settled into my heart like a stone, heavy and foreign, yet not entirely unwelcome. My fortress, built brick by careful brick, felt a little less formidable. A hairline crack, perhaps, was forming. Days folded into weeks, each one bringing me back to the still point like a moth to a flame. My visits became less about seeking refuge from the world and more about seeking refuge in Leo's quiet presence. I still carried my sketchbook, but often my gaze would drift from the page to him, observing the subtle shifts in his expression, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the strength in his hands as he brewed coffee. I found myself noticing things, the faint scent of cedar that always seemed to cling to him, perhaps from the wood paneling in the cafe or his own home, the way he knew intuitively when I needed a fresh mug, placing it down silently, sometimes with a small extra cookie on the saucer, the way he listened, truly listened, to the stories of his other regulars, the aspiring poet, the weary night shift nurse, offering a thoughtful nod, a quiet word of encouragement. He was a keeper of secrets, a quiet confidant for the city's lost souls. One evening, I was sketching a rather intricate pattern, my brow furrowed in concentration, when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up to see Leo, a small plate in his hand. "Trying something new," he murmured, setting down a delicate golden brown pastry dusted with powdered sugar. "Lemon and lavender. Thought you might appreciate the subtleties." My heart gave a familiar, unsettling lurch. He remembered my fondness for lemon poppy seed, my quiet appreciation for small details. This wasn't just a random offering, it was a gesture, a soft reaching out. "Leo, you didn't have to." He smiled, that slow, captivating smile that softened the corners of his eyes. "My pleasure. Tell me what you think." He lingered for a moment, his presence warm and comforting, then retreated back to the counter, leaving me with the pastry and a sudden, overwhelming sense of being seen. The pastry was exquisite, the tartness of lemon perfectly balanced by the floral whisper of lavender. It was a taste of unexpected joy, a flavor that felt like hope. As I ate, I found myself thinking about the past, not with the usual sharp pang of regret, but with a surprising gentleness. My previous love had been loud, passionate, demanding. It had consumed everything, leaving no room for quiet nuances, for gentle gestures like a lemon lavender pastry. It had been a wildfire, brilliant and destructive. Leo felt like the slow, steady warmth of embers, promising comfort, not conflagration. I began to talk to him, tentatively at first, about my work, about the challenges of illustrating a children's book, the frustration of a blank page, the triumph of a completed piece. He listened patiently, asking thoughtful questions that showed he wasn't just being polite, but genuinely interested. He spoke too, in measured tones, about the art of coffee, the alchemy of roasting beans, the community he'd built within the walls of the Still Point. He spoke of the satisfaction of creating a space where people could simply be, without judgment or pressure. "I think that's why I like it here so much," I confessed one rainy Tuesday, my voice barely above a whisper. "It feels safe, like a pause." He leaned against the counter. His hazel eyes reflected the dim lights. "That's what I hope to create," he said, his gaze unwavering. "A still point in a turning world." The conversation deepened, shifting from surface pleasantries to something more profound. I found myself sharing fragments of my past, not the raw, bleeding wounds, but the distant echoes. The feeling of being lost, the struggle to reclaim my identity, the fear of ever trusting again. I spoke of the shadows that still sometimes clung to me, even in the brightest daylight. He didn't offer advice or try to fix me. He simply listened, his presence a quiet affirmation. "It takes courage to rebuild, Ilara," he said one night, his voice low and steady. "And even more courage to let the light back in." His words resonated deep within me, touching a place I thought had been permanently walled off. let the light back in. Was that what I was doing? Was this fragile connection, this quiet understanding with Leo, a form of light? The more time I spent with him, the more I noticed the nuances of his own being. He carried a quiet strength, a resilience that hinted at his own untold stories. I wondered about his past, about the path that led him to create the Still Point. He never spoke of his own romantic history, and I didn't ask. It felt too soon, too intrusive. Our connection was built on the present, on the gentle unfolding of unspoken understanding. One evening, the cafe was completely empty save for us. Rain lashed against the windows, creating a cozy cocoon of sound. I was lost in a particularly difficult illustration, my frustrations mounting. I pushed my sketchbook away with a sigh. "Rough patch?" Leo asked from behind the counter, his voice laced with gentle empathy. I nodded, rubbing my temples. Sometimes it feels like I'm trying to capture smoke. The essence is there, but it slips through my fingers. He walked over to my table, carrying 2 mugs. He placed one before me, a special herbal tea, fragrant with mint and ginger. He sat in the chair opposite me, something he'd never done before. The intimacy of it sent a ripple of nerves and warmth through me. "It's like making coffee," he began, stirring his own tea slowly. "Sometimes you have the perfect beans, the right grind, the exact temperature. And other times it just resists. It tells you it's not ready to be molded into what you want. You have to listen to it. Find the subtle notes. And sometimes you just have to step away, let it breathe, and come back with fresh eyes." His analogy struck a chord deep within me. It wasn't just about coffee or art. It was about life, about healing, about letting go of control and allowing things to unfold naturally. Did you ever feel like giving up on your dream?" I asked, the question tumbling out before I could filter it. It was a raw, vulnerable question, stemming from a deeper fear. The fear that after the wreckage of my past, I might not have the strength to pursue anything meaningful again. He met my gaze, his hazel eyes holding a quiet understanding that bypassed words. "More times than I can count, Talara," he admitted, his voice soft. But then I remembered why I started. Not for the applause, not for the recognition, but for the quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful, something true, something that brings a little comfort to the world. He paused, then added, "And sometimes the comfort it brings is for yourself." His words hung in the air, a gentle affirmation of my own journey. He wasn't just talking about his cafe. He was talking about my art, about my life, about the possibility of finding beauty and truth even after profound loss. He was talking about finding comfort within oneself, and then, perhaps, finding it with another. I looked at him, truly seeing him in that moment, not just the quiet cafe owner, but a man of depth, resilience, and profound empathy. My heart, once so stubbornly sealed, felt a distinct ache, a yearning for something I hadn't dared to name. It wasn't the frantic, desperate longing of my past. This was different. This was a quiet, steady pull, like the moon drawing the tide. The rain continued its gentle serenade, and in the quiet intimacy of the Still Point, I realized a truth I had been subconsciously resisting. Leo wasn't just a safe harbor. He was beginning to feel like a destination, and the thought, terrifying as it was, no longer felt entirely unwelcome. A quiet bloom, indeed, and I wondered, with a hesitant breath, if I was finally ready to let it open. The memory of Leo sitting across from me, his quiet words about finding comfort and staying true to one's purpose, became a warm ember I carried through the following days. It was a pivotal moment, a subtle shift in the landscape of our connection. Before, I had seen him as a constant, a comforting fixture in my healing journey. Now, I saw him as a person, deeply empathetic, with his own quiet wisdom, and with whom I was building something new, something fragile, yet undeniably real. The boundaries I had so carefully erected around my heart began to soften, not crumble dramatically, but gently erode like riverbanks under a steady, patient current. I found myself lingering longer, sometimes even after the last of the other customers had departed, simply enjoying the quiet companionship of his presence. We'd talk, not always about profound things, but about the mundane beauty of everyday life. The changing seasons, a particularly vibrant sunset, the quirks of the neighborhood cats, a new book I was reading. These conversations were like weaving, thread by delicate thread, a tapestry of shared moments. One crisp autumn evening, the air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, I found myself sketching a portrait of Leo. He was behind the counter, absorbed in wiping down the espresso machine, his profile etched against the warm glow of the cafe. I tried to capture the lines of concentration around his eyes, the gentle curve of his lips when he was lost in thought, the quiet strength that radiated from him. It was a risky endeavor, sketching him without his knowledge, but I felt an irresistible urge to capture the essence of him as I saw it. When he finally looked up, catching my gaze, I flinched, my hand freezing mid-stroke. My cheeks flushed crimson, a wave of mortification washing over me. I quickly tried to close my sketchbook, but he was already walking towards my table, a curious, gentle smile on his face. "What have you got there, Alara?" he asked, his voice soft, devoid of judgment. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Nothing," I mumbled, trying to hide the book under my arm. It felt like an invasion, a crossing of an unspoken boundary. He chuckled, a low, warm sound that did little to soothe my nerves, but sent a shiver of a different kind through me. "Don't tell me nothing. Your face tells a different story." He gently but firmly took the sketchbook from my grasp, opening it to the page I'd been working on. His eyes widened slightly as he saw the portrait. He studied it, his expression unreadable for a long moment. My breath hitched in my throat, waiting for his reaction. Discomfort? Annoyance? Then that slow, soft smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes. "You captured me," he said, his voice laced with surprise and something else, something akin to wonder. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, it almost made my knees buckle.
I hope you don't mind," I stammered, still feeling the heat in my face. He looked up from the drawing, his hazel eyes meeting mine, and in their depths, I saw a warmth that made my insides flutter. "Mind? Alara, it's one of the most beautiful things anyone has ever done for me." He traced the outline of his sketched face with a gentle finger. "The way you see me, it's a gift." His words, so simple yet so profound, disarmed me completely. The compliment wasn't just about my artistic skill. It was about the depth of my perception, the way I had truly seen him. In that moment, the last vestiges of my self-protective walls felt less like a fortress and more like a flimsy curtain. A crack had opened, and a torrent of emotion, long suppressed, threatened to spill forth. Could I keep it?" he asked, his voice a little softer now, almost hesitant. I swallowed, my throat tight. "Of course," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "It's yours." He carefully tore the page from the sketchbook, handling it with the reverence one might show a delicate bird. He tucked it behind the counter, a private treasure. The air between us felt charged, humming with an unspoken connection. The romantic tension was palpable, a delicate thread pulled taut between us. After that night, our interactions deepened further. We began to speak more personally, sharing glimpses into our pasts, though still carefully orbiting the painful cores of our former lives. I learned that Leo had once dreamed of being a photographer, capturing moments of truth and beauty, but life had steered him towards the more tangible art of coffee, a different kind of alchemy. He spoke of the satisfaction of creating something comforting, something that brought people together, even in quiet ways. He in turn asked me more about my old love, sensing the lingering shadows. He didn't pry, but his gentle questions invited me to speak, to articulate the pain that had been trapped inside for so long. "It wasn't just the heartbreak, Leo," I confessed one late evening. The cafe lights dimmed, the city outside a blur of rain. "It was the way I lost myself, the way I let him define me. My art, my thoughts, my very identity, they became extensions of his desires. When he left, there was just an empty space where I used to be." My voice trembled, the raw edges of the old wounds still sharp. Leo listened, his gaze unwavering, full of that quiet, steady understanding.
He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. When I finished, a heavy silence descended, broken only by the soft hiss of the espresso machine cooling down. "That's why you built your walls so high, isn't it?" he finally said, his voice a gentle murmur. "To protect the you you've been so painstakingly rebuilding." I nodded, tears pricking at my eyes. "Yes, I'm terrified of losing her again." He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His touch was warm, comforting, and utterly non-demanding. It wasn't a possessive grip, but a gentle anchor. "You won't, Alara," he said, his voice firm, full of conviction. "Because you're stronger now. You know who you are, and anyone who comes into your life now will have to appreciate all of you, not just a reflection." His words were a revelation. He saw my strength, not just my vulnerability. He saw the me I was still discovering, still nurturing. His belief in me was a lifeline. I looked at our hands, his warm and steady over mine, and felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in years, the thought of opening my heart, even just a crack, didn't feel like a prelude to destruction, but a possibility for growth. We started taking short walks together after the cafe closed, just around the block, under the dim street lights, the air often cool and crisp. We'd talk about nothing and everything, the rhythm of our steps falling into an easy synchronicity. These walks, brief as they were, felt like an extension of the safe haven of the Still Point, carrying its quiet intimacy into the wider world. One evening, as we stood outside the cafe door, about to say our goodnights, a sudden, heavy downpour began. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the wind whipped around us. "You can't walk home in this," Leo said, pulling me under the narrow awning of the cafe. "It's a deluge." "I'll be fine," I insisted, though the thought of facing the stormy night alone felt daunting. He shook his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. Nonsense. Wait here. I'll drive you. My heart skipped a beat. A drive. With him. It felt like a monumental step, a gentle push past the safe boundaries of the cafe and our short walks. You don't have to, Leo. I want to, he said, his gaze unwavering. Just wait here, I'll get my keys. He disappeared inside, and I stood there, watching the rain blur the city lights, my mind racing. This was it, wasn't it? The quiet, undeniable progression. The shift from comfortable acquaintances to something more. I felt a nervous excitement bubble up within me, tempered by the familiar tremor of fear. But this time, the fear didn't paralyze me. It felt more like the healthy caution of someone about to embark on a beautiful, unknown adventure. He returned moments later, his jacket slung over his arm, keys jingling. His car, an older model but impeccably maintained, smelled faintly of coffee and something earthy, like old leather and wood. It was comforting. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by the rhythmic swish of the wipers and the gentle hum of the engine. He navigated the rain-slick streets with practiced ease. I sat beside him, acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth radiating from him. The silence was different tonight, charged with a subtle anticipation. When we pulled up to my brownstone, he turned off the engine, plunging us into a deeper quiet, broken only by the persistent drumming of rain on the roof. He turned to me, his hazel eyes soft in the dim light of the dashboard. "Are you all right, Alara?" he asked, his voice low, a genuine concern in his tone. I met his gaze, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to hide, to guard. I felt a surge of courage, born from the trust he had so carefully nurtured within me. "I am," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm more than all right, Leo." He smiled, a slow, gentle unfolding that reached his eyes, and a warmth spread through me, deep and pervasive. He leaned in, just slightly, and for a breathless moment I thought he might kiss me. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, a mixture of terror and an undeniable, aching yearning. But he didn't. Instead, he simply reached out, his thumb gently brushing a stray strand of hair from my cheek. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a jolt through me, a silent promise of something more. "Good night, Alara," he murmured, his voice a soft caress. "Sleep well." I could only nod, my voice caught in my throat. I stumbled out of the car, the rain now a gentle mist, and watched him drive away, the red glow of his taillights disappearing into the misty night. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my fingers tingling from his touch, my heart still fluttering like a trapped bird. The silence of my apartment, usually a comfort, now felt heavy with a bittersweet ache. The quiet bloom was undeniable now, its petals slowly unfurling, exposing my heart to a tenderness I hadn't known was possible. And I knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me, that I wanted to see where this fragile, beautiful bloom would lead. The memory of Leo's gentle touch, the unspoken moment of near kiss in his car, lingered in the air around me for days, like the delicate scent of lavender. It permeated my thoughts, coloring my usually solitary routines with a new, vibrant hue. I found myself humming as I worked on illustrations, my charcoal strokes bolder, my colors brighter. The world, once viewed through a muted filter, seemed to sparkle with a newfound potential. The following evening at the Still Point, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere between us. The comfortable ease was still there, but now it was layered with a delicate, almost palpable tension. Every glance felt a little longer, every shared smile a little softer. I ordered my usual coffee, but our eyes held for a beat longer than before, a silent acknowledgement of the shift that had occurred. He was quieter than usual that night, too, not distant, but thoughtful. He moved with his usual grace behind the counter, but I noticed him stealing glances at me, his brow subtly furrowed, as if lost in contemplation. The cafe was sparsely populated, allowing our unspoken connection to expand, filling the space with a silent conversation. I was trying to focus on a new sketch, but my hand felt restless, my mind too preoccupied. Finally, I closed my sketchbook. Leo was wiping down the counter, the faint scent of lemon from his cleaning solution mingling with the rich aroma of coffee. He looked up, his hazel eyes meeting mine. "Alara," he began, his voice low, a hesitant note in it. "Can I ask you something?" My heart gave a nervous jump. "Of course, Leo." He walked from behind the counter, leaning against the edge of my table, not sitting, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "That night in the car, He trailed off, his gaze searching mine. "I almost kissed you." My breath hitched. The directness of his admission, the vulnerability in his eyes, both startled and captivated me. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I know." A soft, self-deprecating smile touched his lips. I held back, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to rush you. I didn't want to overstep.
"Everything about you, Alara, feels delicate, precious, like a bloom I've watched slowly open." His words, so poetic and tender, struck a chord deep within me. Delicate, precious, a bloom slowly opening. He saw me, truly saw the fragile, healing woman beneath the layers of caution. The vulnerability I had feared revealing was in his eyes something beautiful. "Leo," I started, my voice trembling slightly. I haven't felt like that in a very long time. Not safe enough, not ready enough to feel anything like that. I looked down at my hands, clasped tightly in my lap. My past, it left me so broken, so afraid to trust anything that felt like a spark. He reached out, his hand gently covering mine again, his touch a familiar anchor. "I understand," he said, his voice a balm. "I've seen what a broken heart can do, and I know the courage it takes to even consider letting another person in. I'm not asking you to forget your past, Alara, only to consider that perhaps a new story doesn't have to repeat the old one." His words, filled with such profound patience and understanding, were exactly what I needed to hear. He wasn't demanding, he was inviting. He wasn't pushing, he was simply holding space for me. I looked up, meeting his earnest gaze. "I want to, Leo," I confessed, the words a whisper from a place I hadn't known still existed within me. "I want to see what a new story feels like, with you." A genuine smile, radiant and full of relief, broke across his face. The warmth in his eyes deepened, a silent celebration. He squeezed my hand gently. "Then let's take it slow, Alara, at your pace. No pressure, no expectations, just us, and whatever this quiet thing between us becomes." That night marked a new beginning. Our late-night talks evolved into something deeper, more intimate. We shared stories of our childhoods, our dreams, our fears, our quiet triumphs. I learned about his quiet passion for stargazing, his love for old vinyl records, his dream of one day owning a small cabin by a lake. He learned about my affinity for wild places, my childhood obsession with fairy tales, my secret desire to illustrate a graphic novel. We discovered a myriad of shared interests, small threads weaving our lives together. Our physical interactions remained gentle, respectful of the boundaries I still subconsciously held. A fleeting touch of hands as he passed me a coffee, a shared glance that lingered a moment too long, a soft brush of shoulders as we navigated the small space of the cafe. Each small touch was a spark, a silent promise, and I found myself craving them, craving his proximity, craving the quiet assurance of his presence. One rainy Saturday, a rare day off for both of us,
Leo suggested we visit an antique bookstore he knew, just outside the city. It wasn't a date, not explicitly, but it felt like one, the kind of gentle, unpressured outing that suited us perfectly. The bookstore was a labyrinth of dusty shelves, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and forgotten stories. It was a haven, much like the Still Point, and I felt an immediate sense of peace there. We wandered through the narrow aisles, occasionally bumping shoulders, sharing quiet comments about interesting titles, the soft murmur of our voices blending with the rustle of turning pages. At one point, I reached for a worn copy of a poetry book, my fingers brushing against his as he reached for the same one. Our eyes met, a soft, shared smile passing between us. His fingers lingered on mine for a moment longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement of the growing intimacy between us. My heart fluttered, a sweet, familiar ache. Later, as we sat in a small, independent coffee shop near the bookstore, sipping our lattes, I found myself laughing freely, a sound that felt foreign and exhilarating after so long. Leo's stories about his eccentric regular customers at the Still Point were genuinely amusing, and his quiet joy in sharing them was infectious. "You know," he said, his gaze warm as he watched me laugh, "it's good to hear you laugh, Alara. Really laugh." My laughter subsided, leaving a soft warmth in my chest. "It's good to feel it," I admitted, a genuine smile still on my face. "You bring out a different part of me, Leo, a part I thought was lost." He reached across the table, his hand finding mine, his thumb gently stroking the back of my hand. This time I didn't pull away. I leaned into his touch, allowing myself to feel the warmth, the connection. "And you, Alara," he said softly, his eyes holding mine, "you bring out the dreamer in me, the one who still believes in quiet magic." His words sent a shiver down my spine, a delicious frisson of hope and anticipation. Magic. Yes, that's what this felt like. A quiet, gentle magic, weaving itself into the fabric of my life.
As the weeks continued to unfold, our bond deepened, growing stronger with each shared moment, each vulnerable confession, each knowing glance. We hadn't yet kissed, hadn't explicitly declared ourselves a couple, but the unspoken understanding between us was more profound than any grand declaration. It was in the way his eyes always sought mine when I entered the cafe, the way he knew my order without asking, the comfortable silence that settled between us when words weren't needed. One particularly cold evening, as winter truly began to settle over the city, I arrived at the Still Point shivering, my hands numb despite my gloves. The cafe was warm and inviting, a beacon against the biting wind. Leo was behind the counter, humming softly to himself. He looked up, his expression immediately softening when he saw me. "Alara," he said, a note of concern in his voice. He walked around the counter, taking my gloved hands in his, rubbing them gently between his palms. His touch was so tender, so natural, that I didn't even think to resist. The warmth of his hands, his concern, spread through me, melting the chill from my bones, and perhaps from a deeper place within. "You're freezing," he murmured, his gaze soft. He led me to my usual table, then returned with a steaming mug of spiced cider, a comforting aroma wafting from it. "Drink this, it'll warm you up." I cupped the mug in my hands, feeling the heat seep into my fingers. "Thank you, Leo," I whispered, looking up at him. His eyes, usually so steady, held a deeper, more profound emotion tonight, a quiet intensity that mirrored the yearning in my own heart. He sat down opposite me, his gaze never leaving mine. The cafe was empty, the dim lights casting long, soft shadows around us. The air hummed with unspoken words, with the weight of all the quiet moments that had led us to this one. "Alara," he said, his voice a little rough, as if he was gathering his courage. I don't think I can keep pretending that this is just about friendship anymore. My feelings for you, they've grown into something much more." He paused,
searching my eyes. I care about you deeply, more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. My heart soared, a wild, untamed bird finally released from its cage. His honesty, his vulnerability was breathtaking. The fear was still there, a faint tremor beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of rightness, of belonging. I feel it too, Leo, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. More than I ever thought I could again. You've shown me how to trust again, how to feel safe again. A profound relief washed over his face, softening his features. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine, intertwining our fingers. His thumb stroked my skin, a gentle, rhythmic caress. Then, Alara, he said, his voice a low, tender promise. Let me show you what it's like to be truly loved, to be cherished exactly as you are. No pressure, no demands, just quiet love, healing love. His words were a balm to my soul, a whispered promise of a future I had once believed impossible. In the warm, dim light of the still point, with our hands intertwined across the table, I knew, with a certainty that resonated through every fiber of my being, that I was finally ready to open my heart completely. The quiet bloom was ready to unfurl its petals fully, bathed in the gentle light of Leo's unwavering love. The romantic tension had reached its peak, promising a beautiful, tender surrender. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin, a gesture of tenderness that melted the last vestiges of my guardedness. When we finally broke apart, it was with a soft sigh, our foreheads still resting together. His eyes, now slightly blurred with emotion, searched mine, seeking reassurance. "Alara," he whispered, his voice husky, "you have no idea how long I've wanted to do that." A soft, genuine laugh escaped me, a sound of pure joy. "I think I might have an idea," I replied, my own voice a little shaky. "It was perfect." He smiled, a wide, incandescent smile that lit up his entire face. More than perfect. He kissed my forehead, then the tip of my nose. "Let me walk you home." That walk was different from all the others. Our hands remained intertwined, his thumb occasionally tracing patterns on my skin. We walked closer, our shoulders brushing, a comfortable warmth radiating between us despite the biting winter air. The city lights seemed to twinkle brighter, the distant hum of traffic transformed into a comforting lullaby. My apartment, once a solitary haven, now felt like a place I could finally invite someone into, not just physically, but emotionally. At my doorstep, he didn't just say goodnight. He pulled me into a soft, comforting embrace, holding me close, letting me rest my head against his chest. I could hear the steady beat of his heart, a rhythm that felt profoundly right. "Sleep well, Alara," he murmured into my hair, his voice a soft caress. "Dream beautiful things." I looked up at him, my heart full to bursting. "I think I will," I whispered, "because of you." He kissed me again, a lingering, tender kiss that spoke of patience and deep affection. Then, with a reluctant smile, he let me go, watching until I was safely inside my apartment. I leaned against the closed door, my fingers touching my lips, a soft, giddy joy bubbling inside me. The quiet bloom had finally unfurled, revealing its hidden beauty, and the world felt infinitely brighter. The days that followed were a gentle dance of discovery. Our relationship bloomed organically, nurtured by the same quiet understanding and respect that had first drawn us together. Dates were simple, heartfelt affairs, long walks in snowy parks, sharing meals at cozy, tucked-away restaurants, lingering over art exhibits, or simply spending evenings at the still point after closing, talking for hours, lost in each other's company. I found myself painting again, with an intensity and joy I hadn't felt in years. The colors were richer, the strokes more confident. Leo was my muse, not in a demanding way, but as an inspiration, a gentle light that illuminated my creative spirit. I sketched him constantly, capturing his various expressions, the quiet intensity, the tender smiles. These sketches, unlike the one I'd hidden, were freely shared, a testament to the trust that now flowed effortlessly between us. He, in turn, found renewed inspiration in his photography. He started carrying his old camera with him, capturing the subtle beauty of the city, the play of light and shadow, the quiet moments of connection he observed. He would show me his prints, his eyes shining with a rediscovered passion, and I would offer my feedback, our shared artistic language a new layer of intimacy. One sunny spring afternoon, several months after our first kiss, we were sitting on a park bench, sharing an ice cream cone, watching children chase pigeons. The world felt vibrant, alive with the promise of renewal. "You know," I said, turning to him, a soft smile on my face, "I used to dread spring. It always felt like a cruel reminder of new beginnings I wasn't ready for, of old hurts that refused to fade." He squeezed my hand. And now, I leaned my head on his shoulder, inhaling the comforting scent of him. Now it feels like hope, like possibility, like everything is finally blooming, just like my own heart. He kissed the top of my head. "It's a beautiful bloom, Alara, and I'm so incredibly grateful to be here to witness it." Our relationship wasn't without its quiet moments of introspection. There were still days when shadows from my past would surface, moments of doubt or anxiety that would creep in. But now, I didn't face them alone. Leo was always there, a steady, unwavering presence. He wouldn't try to dismiss my feelings or offer quick fixes. He would simply listen, hold my hand, and remind me of the strength I possessed, the healing I had already achieved. He helped me understand that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, accepting it as part of my story, and choosing to move forward with an open heart. One evening, as we prepared to close the still point together, the warm light bathing us in a golden glow, Leo turned to me, his hands gently holding mine. "Alara," he began, his voice soft, yet filled with a profound depth of emotion. "My still point, it's always been about creating a safe haven, a place for quiet reflection, for comfort. But with you, it's become so much more. It's become a home, and you, my love, are my home." My heart swelled, tears blurring my vision. He had articulated the very essence of what he had become to me, not just a place, but a person, a sanctuary. "And you, Leo," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, "you are the anchor that lets me float, the quiet strength that lets me finally breathe. You are my still point, in every sense of the word." He pulled me into his arms, holding me close, and I felt a sense of belonging so profound it brought tears to my eyes. This was it. This was the healing love I had yearned for, the gentle, nurturing connection that allowed me to be fully myself, scars and all. It wasn't a dramatic whirlwind romance, but a love that had grown from the quiet corners of the heart, nurtured by patience, understanding, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of renewal. Our future was an open book, its pages waiting to be filled with countless quiet moments, shared laughter, and gentle touches. We might travel, create art side by side, perhaps even expand the still point into a small gallery for local artists. The possibilities stretched before us, bright and inviting, not overwhelming. As I walked out into the cool night air, hand in hand with Leo, the city's sounds felt different. They were no longer a cacophony that I sought refuge from, but a vibrant backdrop to the quiet symphony of our love. The rain might fall, the winds might blow, but within the sanctuary of our connection, I knew I was safe. My heart, once a shattered landscape, was now a garden, tended with care, blooming with a quiet, enduring beauty. The journey had been long, filled with shadows and pain, but it had led me here, to Leo, to a love that was profoundly peaceful, utterly real, and beautifully, irrevocably healed.